All right, so it looks like we're in a similar situation to what we were not too long ago. I feel like I did a video on a similar topic not long ago at all. But it's once again TYT's founder, Cenk Uygur, getting into some heavy controversy. I actually saw Cenk trending on Twitter, had like 3 or 5,000 tweets, so he was trending on Twitter. He got a lot of blowback, again, from the progressive left. Now, this is an issue that's a bit complex and complicated. So there's all these different pockets that we're going to have to go through all of these. But we're going to try to go into it as much as we can here. So Cenk set off a firestorm by sending out a tweet saying, "Some are upset Elizabeth Warren is seemingly backing away from Medicare for all. Yeah, me too. Do you know why she's doing that? Because we lost. When you win the primary, you get to do your policies. When you don't, you negotiate for best possible outcome under the circumstances." Now, this set off a firestorm. Now, before we get into the response to this, I actually want to just tell you about what the source of what he's talking about is. So, there's this piece in Politico titled "Warren Pivots on Medicare for All and Bid to Becomes Biden's VP." As you guys know, right now there's a rat race of about 6 or 7 women who are trying to become his vice president. He's kind of dangling them by their tails right now. They're all running around really saying, I'd love to be Biden's VP. Stacey Abrams getting so excited, then being told on television, basically, "I'm not choosing you," pretty much, getting really sad. So she's jumped into this race, the second most, second in line to the presidency. I guess a very powerful position. But her quote specifically was, quote, "I think right now people want to see improvements in our healthcare system, and that means strengthening the Affordable Care Act." And she told that to students of University of Chicago's Institute of Politics, while adding that she still wants to get to single payer eventually. So that was her comment, and a lot of people were angry, including myself, although I'm a bit desensitized to any sort of Warren negative stories because I'm so used to them at this point. But certainly not a good line. Now, this is what Cenk Uygur said. I already read to you guys the tweet. Basically, he's saying that Elizabeth Warren is, backing away from Medicare for all, but, it's because we lost and she's just trying to do what we can at this point. So he got a ton of blowback. David Doel says, "Doesn't that assume Biden won because of policy? All the states Biden won support Medicare for all in exit polling. Yes, Biden has the power. Doesn't mean everyone with their own political power has to fall in line with everything he says." Now, this is definitely partially true from David, but also partially not really true. Because in this specific situation, Cenk is hoping that Elizabeth Warren gets the vice presidency slot. So, in that, if he's going to pick her, in her mind at least, or in most people's mind, she's going to have to fall in line. But Mike also says, "Disagree 100%. Winning or losing doesn't change what policies are needed to save lives. Morality isn't relative. You never acquiesce. You shame and expose the corporatist and pressure him to adopt your policies by threatening to withhold support. What's right is right." So this is a different perspective than what Cenk is saying. I understand both perspectives, but in the mind of Cenk Uygur, he's basically thinking, okay, what is the way for Elizabeth Warren to become the vice president? So, it's sort of two different perspectives. Mike is sort of taking and this is what most people seem to know, it's the moral thing, it's the righteous thing. Although there's another take, which is the one that I'm going to hold. Emma Vigeland, who's actually the number one Warren stan for a long time, very annoying, sending out a tweet saying, she's not negotiating for any policy outcome except joining the presidential ticket. She said those comments to a college. It's not a negotiation. It's a public plea for VP. What use is she as a progressive on the ticket if she's conceding top policy goals for personal gain? So again, this is another perspective. The perspective that Cenk is giving is that she's doing it basically to get the VP slot, which would then be able to exert her influence to increase healthcare access, or coverage, I should say. I know the access is a taboo word now, and rightfully so. But ton of blowback, and I want to show you guys this clip here of Cenk explaining himself on TYT, because he did have a conversation with Anna Kasparian on it. So go ahead and hear this out.
In her beliefs, I think is incredibly sad. No. That's where I'm coming from.
So I think half of what you're saying is true, but I think the other half is really important. Did Biden go towards the mainstream and establishment during the primary? Yes. By the way, did it work? Yes. he won because of that. And so that sucks for us, and it's terrible, but it's a reality. But on the other hand, when normally you go to a general election, the Democratic candidate swings to the right. But in this case, Biden has done the opposite. Instead of going more establishment, he has swung to the left. He did a task force that has indisputably progressive people on it, not just AOC, but Stephanie Kelton, Abdul El Sayed, and the list goes on. That is a very progressive task force. I talked to Bernie Sanders about it today. We're going to air that interview tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Eastern on tyt.com/live. I'm sorry, 5:30. Yeah, that's right, Eastern. 5:30 p.m. He said that's when the show starts now with interviews. Okay, and I asked him about it. Now, watch the interview. He'll answer for himself. But the main takeaway that I get as a progressive, and having talked to people like Bernie Sanders, is look, you do a task force, and if you don't follow their recommendations, there is significant blowback that comes along with that. And so Biden took that risk to go left. If it's a giant if he picks Elizabeth Warren, take the victory. It's the second most progressive senator in the country. So what do you want him to do? Pick Klobuchar? That we don't want that. We want him to we want to encourage him to take Warren. Now, look, there's so many other things I can say, but I got to say this one other thing. Now, would I change my stance on Medicare for all? Absolutely not. Right. On the other hand, if you said to me, okay, will you take a deal now that now you lost the primary, the other guys won the primary. Now they're offering you an olive branch and they're willing to go whatever percentage of the way there. If you believe it's real and it's not a trick, are you willing to go further, have them go further left to meet you? My answer is yes. I'll take yes for an answer. So I don't know why we're pushing Biden away when he's trying to come in this direction. So look, we have a poll, and Anna, I'm curious what you think. But I'm
So pretty much what you see there, Cenk trying to explain himself, and he's given his perspective. And so my sort of takeaway on this whole situation is Cenk isn't totally wrong, and I know people are sort of unanimously outraged, but I think when you really sort of think about it, really digest what he's trying to say, it certainly isn't the case that he's wrong about everything. It's just not the case. Now, the one thing that I think is off is if he's I don't know if he's under the impression or under the belief that Elizabeth Warren is basically backing away from Medicare for all solely for the purpose of like, I'm going to be deceptive or, I'm going to tone down my rhetoric, but I love Medicare for all. Elizabeth Warren doesn't support Medicare for all, and that's the reality of it. But one thing we have to say is if you compare Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren, no matter how much of a snake and a fraud Elizabeth Warren is, there's no way you could tell me that Elizabeth Warren is not more progressive than Amy Klobuchar. And she's probably more progressive than Kamala Harris, although that one gets into a little bit of a muddy one. Amy Klobuchar is a downright centrist, so oftentimes Republican-leaning. So, she's the type, and I think there were 4 senators that said some, those stupid plans that they come out with where it's like, oh, we'll give you this loan, tax, like credit loan. It's really, really bad. But that's the kind of stuff that she does. So Elizabeth Warren will try to get more people health care than Amy Klobuchar will. So when he says, hey, you lost, Elizabeth Warren being VP for Joe Biden is better, at least in the short term, I think that's indisputable. I really do. As in terms of who's more progressive, Amy Klobuchar or Elizabeth Warren, that's an easy one. It's Elizabeth Warren. No matter how much you hate Elizabeth Warren, it's just true. It's just a fact. And so from that perspective, I understand what he's saying. I think that may be helpful short term, but the only problems I have with that are, it's short term, but I also don't really see anything other than Medicare for all actually being a building block for Medicare for all. There seems to be this idea that existed. Stepping stone to Medicare for all is a public option. But, Obamacare was supposed to be a stepping stool to M4A, at least supposedly it was, right? So we're nowhere closer to Medicare for all than we were back then, or universal health care, we can call it even. We're really no closer in terms of those people supporting it. And so I don't understand how that really is going to work. So if we get a public option, people are all of a sudden going to be more inclined to support Medicare for all. I'm not really feeling that. And in addition to that, I think that the way that the political pendulum swings and the way that the Democrats are horrible at winning elections, they're just going to get into perpetual, forever fight over protecting that, Obamacare. They're not even going to get a public option. They couldn't get a public option, in Obama's first term. They're certainly not going to get it now. So you're talking about not even a public option. They're just going to be in a perpetual fight to protect it. And I don't think that gets us any closer to Medicare for all than it does now. And so, short term, is it helpful? Sure. But so I see where he's coming from. But when Cenk says that Biden is, he has this really progressive task force, that's not how that works. So the people on that task force, there's an equal amount of people who are on the opposing side. So like when you say it's like, oh, super progressive task force, it's not like it's just them just like they're just talking it out. It's not like AOC, and the other progressives are there just deliberating with each other as to what the recommendations are going to be to give them. No, like they have like 3 other corporatists across from them, and that's, who they talk it with. What's to stop them from just ignoring them outright and being like, yeah, it's a performative theater? That's what I think it is. I think it's all performative theater and a waste of time. And then also you have to ask yourself the question, is Biden even going to pick Warren? Which, I think he's going to pick Klobuchar, although I'm not 100% sure. But Elizabeth Warren was floated and supposedly, according to reports, was supposed to be Joe Biden's vice president in 2016 if he were to run, but he was convinced out of running because they wanted to crown Hillary as the Democratic nominee. So, I don't think he's gonna pick her. I just don't see it happening. Is it impossible? I will not say that. No, it's not true. But I think that it's pretty unlikely. So, Cenk getting a ton of blowback, trending on Twitter once again. But is he 100% wrong? No, I don't think so. The only thing that I think he's really wrong on, aside from the other little pieces about, building blocks 10-4A, I don't like this tweet just seems to try to say that basically, she's being deceptive. Just so she's a real supporter of M4A, but she's just being deceptive so that she can then bring her beliefs into power, which that would be cool. I'd be fine with that. But that's not Elizabeth Warren. So, people coming at it from moral positions, which is cool, but when it comes to reality and politics, it just doesn't fit. I'm sorry. It just doesn't work that way. So I kind of see both sides, and certainly Cenk is not 100% wrong. Like, not even close.